Money is everywhere. It influences how we live, what choices we make, and even how we feel about ourselves. But money is not just about numbers or spreadsheets. It is about psychology. It is about how we think, how we behave, and how we react under pressure. Two people can have the same financial knowledge, yet end up with completely different outcomes. Why? Because success with money is not always about what you know, but about how you act. And behavior is hard to teach. It comes from your unique experiences, your upbringing, your fears, and your desires. This book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, explores timeless lessons about wealth, greed, and happiness. It shows us that financial success is less about IQ and more about patience, discipline, and emotional control. The stories here are not filled with complex formulas. They are simple, human, and deeply relatable. They reveal why some people make smart choices and others make painful mistakes even when they know better. To understand this journey, let us begin with the first lesson: that no one is crazy when it comes to money. We all act based on our own experiences, and that is where the story begins. Chapter 1. No one's crazy. When it comes to money, everyone has a story. Everyone has a past. And that past shapes the way we see the world today. Think of money not as mathematics, but as memory. Not as logic, but as experience. A person who grew up during war, seeing hunger and instability, will never see money the same way as a person who grew up in peace and comfort. A child who saw parents lose everything during a financial crash will always carry a hidden fear of risk. While another child, raised in a booming economy, may see the stock market as a playground of opportunity. So when two people make completely different choices about money, it does not mean one is smart and the other is stupid. It means their life stories are different. Morgan Housel calls this the truth that no one's crazy. Imagine someone who lived through the Great Depression. They may forever prefer to keep cash under the mattress because banks once failed them. To younger generations, this looks foolish, but to them it is survival. Now imagine someone who only saw booming stock markets in their youth. They may put all their savings in risky shares. If you tell them to keep cash aside, they may laugh. Both are acting rationally, based on their own experiences. This is why financial arguments often fail. You may try to explain your strategy to someone else, but they cannot see through your eyes. Your history is not their history. Your fears are not their fears. Your confidence is not their confidence. Consider this. If you were born in the United States after the Second World War, you lived through decades of prosperity, a strong job market, and rising home values. You might naturally believe that the future will be bright. But if you were born in Zimbabwe during a time of hyperinflation, your belief about the value of money would be completely different. For one person, saving in a bank is safe. For another person, saving in a bank is dangerous. Who is right? Both are. And here lies the heart of the matter. What looks like crazy behavior to you may be the most logical decision for someone else. When we fail to see this, we end up judging others too quickly. We call them foolish, greedy, or irresponsible. But in truth, they are reacting to a lifetime of personal lessons. Let's take an example. In the late 1990s, many investors poured their money into internet companies. When the dot-com bubble collapsed, people who lost everything swore never to trust the stock market again. Years later, they avoided investing, even when opportunities were good. To outsiders, this looked like fear and weakness. But to them, it was wisdom, because once burned, twice shy. On the other hand, a new generation that did not feel that pain looked at technology stocks and saw promise. Both groups were simply responding to their unique history. So what is the lesson for us? The first step in understanding money is to accept that there is no universal right or wrong way to behave. There are only personal ways. No one is crazy. Everyone is reasonable according to their own eyes. And if we want to learn from others, we must respect their journey before judging their choices. This lesson also prepares us for what comes next. Because once we see that money is deeply personal, we begin to realize that luck and risk play a far bigger role than we admit. The story of wealth is not just about effort or intelligence. It is also about chance, and that is the focus of the next chapter. Chapter 2: Luck and Risk. Money is not only about skill, it is also about luck, and it is also about risk. Many of us like to believe that success comes purely from hard work, intelligence, and smart decisions. We like the idea that life is fair and that good choices always lead to good outcomes. But reality is far more complicated. The truth is that luck and risk influence our lives more than we often admit. Consider Bill Gates. He became one of the richest men in the world. Was it only because he was brilliant and hard-working? No. Part of his success came from extraordinary luck. He had access to one of the very few computers in his school when he was a teenager. At that time, computers were rare and expensive. Most kids, even smart and hard-working ones, had no such opportunity. The timing and circumstances gave him a chance that others never had. Now consider another story. Imagine a talented entrepreneur in the same era who started a tech company. They worked tirelessly, made brilliant decisions, and yet failed because the market crashed or funding dried up. They took risks, but luck did not favor them. From the outside, success may look like meritocracy, but luck plays a silent role in the story. Risk works the same way, but in reverse. Every financial decision carries the possibility of loss. Even the best investors, with perfect strategies, will sometimes fail. Some of these failures are because of bad choices, but many are because of circumstances beyond their control. Life and finance are not fair games. Risk cannot be eliminated, only managed. The lesson here is humility. No one can fully control their outcomes. If we succeed, we should recognize the role of luck in our story. If we fail, we should understand that not all failure is our fault. Sometimes, circumstances simply intervene. Luck and risk also affect how we perceive others. It is tempting to assume that someone wealthy worked harder than us, or that someone poor made bad choices. But this overlooks the role of forces beyond control. Two people can make identical decisions and end up in completely different places. We must respect that the world is uncertain. We must respect chance. This chapter also reveals why financial history is so misleading. When we look back, we often glorify winners and ignore the losers. We see Bill Gates and Steve Jobs as geniuses. We forget the thousands of other talented people who tried similar paths and never succeeded. History hides the role of luck. And we forget that risk affects everyone differently. The key is to build strategies that survive uncertainty. Do not assume you can predict everything. Do not believe your success is fully your own doing. Prepare for the unexpected. Save, diversify, and remain cautious, even when things are going well. Understanding luck and risk also sets up the next lesson. Because once we accept that some outcomes are out of our control, we begin to see the dangers of never knowing when enough is enough. Chasing more without limits can amplify both luck and risk, and that is the focus of the next chapter. Chapter 3: Never Enough. Sometimes people already have more than enough, yet they chase more. They take greater risks. They never feel satisfied. Money is strange. It is a tool for security and freedom. But when we let it define our worth, it becomes a trap. Chasing more than we need can lead to disaster. Morgan Housel tells stories of people who risked everything for wealth they did not need. They had luxurious homes, expensive cars, and fat bank accounts. Yet they gambled on risky deals, piled up debt, and sometimes lost it all. The lesson is simple. Wealth without limits is dangerous. To understand this, think about a person who wants to retire rich. They already have a comfortable income, savings, and investments that can last a lifetime. But they keep chasing higher returns. They take aggressive risks in stocks, real estate, or business ventures. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. The danger is not just losing money. The danger is that the pursuit itself creates stress, fear, and poor decisions. Housel explains that knowing what is enough is a rare skill. It requires self-awareness and humility. It requires asking yourself, do I need more than I already have? This question separates the wise from the reckless. Greed often comes disguised as ambition. People admire those who push boundaries, take bold risks, and accumulate wealth. But admiration can be misleading. Some of the most celebrated fortunes were built by people who risked everything for gains that were not necessary. Meanwhile, quiet savers, patient investors, and moderate earners often create lasting wealth. Their advantage is stability, not drama. Another important point is comparison. We often judge our own success against the lives of others. Social media, news, and gossip amplify envy. Someone else's wealth may look enormous, but it is irrelevant to your needs. Chasing someone else's standard can trap you in a cycle of endless wanting. Your own definition of enough is what matters. Knowing when enough is also a defense against volatility. If your financial goals are realistic, you can make calmer decisions. You do not need to gamble on uncertain bets to achieve happiness. Excess ambition often magnifies the risks of luck and misfortune discussed in the previous chapter. Housel also warns about the invisible cost of never being satisfied. Stress, strained relationships, and missed opportunities are often the price of greed. A person may gain millions, yet lose health, friendships, or peace of mind. Money should serve life, not the other way around. Finally, the chapter prepares us for one of the most powerful principles in finance: compounding. Because when we accept enough, we can focus on patience. We can let small, steady gains grow over decades instead of chasing giant, risky wins. Understanding that enough is enough allows compounding to work quietly and effectively. So the key lesson here is simple. Define enough for yourself. Respect your limits. Avoid the trap of endless wanting. This understanding will set the stage for the next chapter, where Housel explores the quiet, often underestimated magic of compounding. Chapter 4: Confounding Compounding. Compounding is often called the most powerful force in finance. It is simple to understand, but hard to believe. Small gains, repeated over time, grow into enormous results. Yet people underestimate it because it happens quietly. Morgan Housel tells the story of Warren Buffett, whose fortune is legendary. What many forget is that Buffett's wealth was not built by genius alone. It was built by time, by patience, by staying invested for decades. Most of his wealth came after he turned 65. It was the power of compounding, working quietly, almost invisibly, over time. The mistake most people make is thinking they need dramatic wins to become wealthy. They chase big deals, high returns, and risky investments. They forget that wealth often grows in the background, slowly, steadily. Compounding is not exciting, but it is effective. Consider a simple example. Imagine you save a small amount every month and invest it wisely. At first, the growth is almost invisible. You may feel impatient. But over years and decades, the returns on your returns start to snowball. $100 today can become thousands, then tens of thousands, then more, without any dramatic action. Housel also points out that compounding is counterintuitive. People tend to focus on short-term results. They judge investments by their yearly returns rather than by how much they will grow over decades. This short-sightedness is why many fail to benefit from compounding. Another important lesson is patience. The magic of compounding only works when you give it time. If you withdraw, sell, or panic during temporary losses, you interrupt the process. Time is the secret ingredient that multiplies small advantages into extraordinary results. Compounding is also about consistency. It does not reward occasional brilliance. It rewards steady, disciplined action. Saving a little every month, reinvesting dividends, and avoiding unnecessary risks create a rhythm that allows wealth to grow quietly and reliably. Housel emphasizes that this principle applies beyond money. Knowledge, skills, relationships, and habits also compound. A small daily effort in learning or practice grows into mastery over years. The same quiet accumulation that builds financial wealth can also build life success. Finally, compounding is fragile. It requires survival. One mistake, one catastrophic decision, or one unexpected event can wipe out decades of growth. This connects back to the previous chapters about risk and knowing enough. To benefit from compounding, you must protect what you have and act with patience. The key message is this: wealth is often invisible. It grows slowly and quietly, and the people who respect it rarely boast about it. You do not need to take huge risks or chase big wins. You need to be consistent, patient, and disciplined. Understanding compounding prepares you for the next lesson: the difference between getting wealthy and staying wealthy, because long-term survival is just as important as growth. Chapter 5: Getting Wealthy versus Staying Wealthy. Making money and keeping money are not the same thing. This is a distinction many people fail to understand. The skills that help you get rich are different from the skills that help you stay rich. Getting wealthy often requires taking risks. It requires bold decisions, optimism, and sometimes even a little luck. Entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators must seize opportunities when others hesitate. They often stretch themselves beyond comfort, trying new ideas, launching businesses, or investing in unproven markets. Without courage, vision, and calculated risk, most people never get wealthy. But staying wealthy is a different challenge. Once you have money, the main task becomes protection. You must manage risk, avoid reckless decisions, and survive the ups and downs of life and markets. Humility, patience, and fear become far more valuable than boldness. A person can be brilliant at earning money, but lose it all by making careless choices or chasing risky ventures. Morgan Housel emphasizes that survival is the secret of wealth. You can take many chances in your youth, but if those choices wipe you out, nothing else matters. A smart person who fails to protect what they have will lose the opportunity to grow wealth through time and compounding. The greatest fortunes often belong to those who are cautious enough to survive crises. Consider historical examples. Many of the most famous business empires crumbled because their founders overextended themselves. They made brilliant gains, but failed to protect their wealth during downturns. Meanwhile, some modest investors who avoided unnecessary risk quietly accumulated fortunes over decades. The lesson is that avoiding ruin is sometimes more important than achieving extraordinary gains. Another key point is that people often confuse style with substance. They admire flashy, high-risk entrepreneurs who make headlines. But many of these success stories are short-lived. Sustainable wealth is quiet, steady, and often invisible. It grows gradually and avoids dramatic risks that can wipe out decades of progress. Housel also notes the psychological differences between getting rich and staying rich. When chasing wealth, optimism and audacity are your allies. When maintaining wealth, restraint and caution are your friends. This requires emotional discipline, understanding your own limitations, and sometimes stepping back when temptation is high. This distinction also applies to lifestyle choices. Newly wealthy individuals may feel pressure to spend extravagantly to signal success, but overspending can undermine financial security. The wealthy who endure are often those who prioritize financial independence over status. Finally, the chapter highlights an essential truth: longevity matters. Money is not just about accumulation, it is about time. To truly benefit from wealth, you must survive long enough to let compounding and smart decisions work in your favor. The goal is not to win once, but to continue winning for decades. The insight from this chapter naturally leads to the next lesson. Because when we recognize the importance of survival, we also see the power of rare, extraordinary events in shaping wealth. These events, or tales, can make or break fortunes. And that is the focus of the next chapter. Chapter 6: Tales You Win. In finance and life, a few events often account for the majority of outcomes. These are called tales, extreme events that carry enormous influence. Most things are average, but a small number of events have outsized impact. Recognizing this is essential for understanding wealth. Morgan Housel explains that in investing, a handful of stocks or decisions often create most of the returns. For example, in the history of the stock market, a very small percentage of companies generate the majority of long-term gains. Most companies, even promising ones, fail or grow slowly. If an investor misses the few that succeed wildly, they may underperform despite being rational and disciplined. This principle applies to careers, business, and life as well. Few moments define success. A key promotion, a bold decision, or even meeting the right mentor can shape decades of outcomes. Meanwhile, countless smaller efforts may contribute little to the final result. Understanding tales helps us focus on opportunities that matter most. The concept also explains why luck and risk are so important. Some people achieve extraordinary success because they were in the right place at the right time. Others fail despite working hard and making smart choices. Tales amplify these effects. A rare success can outweigh a lifetime of average outcomes. A rare disaster can erase decades of careful planning. Housel warns that tales also make life unpredictable. Trying to predict every outcome or control every risk is futile. The rare events are inherently uncertain. Instead, the goal should be to survive long enough to catch the positive tales and avoid the negative ones. Patience is critical. Most successes are invisible for a long time. Buffett's fortune, for example, was not built in a single decade, but over decades, largely because he stayed invested through small, consistent gains, while catching a few extraordinary opportunities. Missing a tale can make it seem like your effort is wasted. Catching one tale can make your entire strategy successful. This understanding also shapes how we view risk. You cannot avoid all risk, and you cannot predict which small decisions will turn out to be big. The best approach is to remain flexible, resilient, and prepared for extreme outcomes. Small mistakes will happen, but surviving them allows you to benefit from the rare, transformative events. Housel emphasizes that humans naturally underestimate tales. We focus on averages and think results should be predictable. But life is uneven. The few extreme successes and failures dominate the story. Recognizing this reality helps investors, entrepreneurs, and anyone planning their future make better decisions. This chapter also ties back to patience and compounding, because catching a tale requires time. Rare opportunities may not appear every day, month, or year. The people who succeed are often those who stick around, who endure through ordinary periods to seize extraordinary moments. The key lesson is this: do not be discouraged by small failures. Do not overreact to short-term results. Focus on survival, discipline, and patience. Let the rare, powerful events work in your favor. This principle leads naturally to the next chapter, which explains why wealth is more than money. It is also freedom. Chapter 7. Freedom. True wealth is not measured by numbers in a bank account or the size of your house. It is measured by freedom. Freedom to live life on your own terms. Freedom to wake up and decide how you spend your day. Freedom to say no to things you do not want. Money, at its best, buys this kind of independence. Morgan Housel explains that the happiest people with money are not those who earn the most, but those who have control over their time. A person can have millions and still feel trapped, working endlessly to maintain a lifestyle or impress others. Meanwhile, someone with modest means, but who controls their schedule and decisions, can feel rich and secure. Freedom is the ultimate form of wealth. Housel emphasizes that many people misunderstand wealth. They equate it with luxury items, fancy cars, or expensive vacations. These things are fleeting pleasures. They do not grant real security or happiness. Freedom does. The ability to make choices without pressure, fear, or obligation is priceless. This principle also explains why some wealthy people live modestly. They understand that money is a tool, not a trophy. By spending less on status and more on flexibility, they maintain control over their lives. They can take risks, pursue passions, and recover from setbacks without stress. This is the kind of wealth that compounds quietly over time. Housel provides examples of people who valued freedom above everything. Entrepreneurs who started businesses not to earn more money, but to escape the 9-to-5 grind. Investors who preferred smaller, safer returns because it allowed them to work on their own terms. Even people with modest income prioritized choices that gave them control over their time. Another important point is the connection between freedom and patience. When you own your time, you can wait for the right opportunities. You do not need to chase every trend, every hype, or every risky investment. Patience and control go hand in hand. They create space for compounding and for catching rare opportunities, as discussed in earlier chapters. Freedom also protects against stress and fear. Money without freedom can feel like a burden. A person may be wealthy in numbers, but enslaved by obligations, debt, or the constant need to impress others. True wealth reduces pressure. It gives peace of mind. It creates options for the future. Housel warns that freedom is a fragile asset. It can be lost faster than money itself. Overcommitting, over-leveraging, or chasing status can erode control. Avoiding these traps preserves not only wealth, but the ability to live life on your own terms. Finally, this chapter connects to the next lesson about the illusions of status. Because once you understand that freedom is real wealth, the desire to impress others, own fancy cars, or luxurious possessions starts to feel meaningless. This prepares us for the next chapter. Chapter 8. Man in the Car Paradox. Many people spend a lifetime trying to impress others with wealth. They buy expensive cars, flashy clothes, or luxury homes. They believe that these possessions will earn admiration and respect. Morgan Housel calls this the man in the car paradox. Imagine a man driving a brand new luxury car. He feels proud, imagining that people notice him, that they admire his taste, success, and status. He believes this car elevates him in the eyes of others. But the reality is different. When people see the car, they admire the car itself, not the driver. No one thinks, "What an impressive person." They think, "That is a nice car." The paradox is simple. Spending to impress others rarely works as intended. Housel explains that the desire to signal wealth is deeply human. We want validation, status, and recognition. But most forms of visible wealth are loud, public, and shallow. They can create the illusion of admiration, but rarely deliver it. Even if someone notices, the admiration is fleeting. It does not translate into lasting respect, happiness, or security. This chapter also highlights the emotional cost of chasing status. The more we focus on impressing others, the less we focus on our own freedom, happiness, and financial security. We may take on debt to buy bigger houses or luxury cars. We may stretch ourselves financially, risking long-term stability for short-term applause. The paradox shows that this effort is largely wasted. Housel uses examples from history and modern life. People with modest means but independent lifestyles are often happier than those with ostentatious wealth trapped in obligations. Meanwhile, billionaires like Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger live simple lives and focus on control, not show. Their wealth is silent, private, and focused on freedom rather than admiration. Another lesson is that visible wealth can mislead others. A flashy lifestyle may suggest financial security, but the person behind it might be over-leveraged or stressed. Conversely, someone with understated wealth may have true financial freedom. We cannot judge wealth by appearances. Real wealth is what is invisible, the savings, investments, and security that others do not see. This connects naturally to the next chapter. Because understanding the man in the car paradox helps us realize that wealth is not what you display, but what you keep. Real financial power comes from restraint, discretion, and patience. The next chapter dives deeper into this idea. Chapter 9. Wealth is what you don't see. Many people confuse wealth with spending. They assume that rich people must live extravagantly. Big houses, luxury cars, designer clothes, and lavish vacations seem to signal wealth. But Morgan Housel warns us that real wealth is invisible. True wealth is what you do not see. It is the money saved, invested, and protected. It is the security that allows freedom, choice, and peace of mind. The flashy items people notice are often liabilities, not assets. When someone spends on status, they may be rich in appearance, but poor in reality. Consider this example. A person may drive a brand new luxury car, live in a huge mansion, and wear expensive watches. From the outside, it looks like financial mastery. But behind the scenes, they may have no savings, high debt, and no true security. Their wealth is visible, but their financial independence is fragile. Housel contrasts this with individuals who live modestly. They drive ordinary cars, rent instead of buying oversized homes, and spend wisely. Yet they save diligently, invest consistently, and let their money grow quietly. To outsiders, they appear ordinary. But in reality, they have financial freedom, flexibility, and stability. Their wealth is silent, protected, and enduring. This idea challenges our cultural obsession with status. We often equate visible luxury with success. We chase the lifestyles of the rich and famous. Social media amplifies this illusion, showing curated lives and flashy possessions. But appearances are misleading. Wealth is not what you flaunt. It is what you retain, grow, and control. Housel also emphasizes that this principle applies to long-term financial planning. Consistent saving, patience, and disciplined investing compound over decades. These actions are invisible in the short term. They do not bring instant gratification or public admiration, but they create security and freedom, which matter far more than appearances. Another important point is the psychological benefit of hidden wealth. Knowing you have financial reserves reduces stress. It allows you to take opportunities without fear. It protects you from emergencies and uncertainty. This silent wealth gives confidence and peace, qualities that flashy spending cannot buy. The chapter also links back to earlier lessons. Freedom is wealth. Compounding grows wealth. Avoiding risky status signals protects wealth. Everything that is truly valuable is often hidden from view. By focusing on what you keep instead of what you show, you align behavior with long-term success. Finally, this lesson sets up the next chapter. The importance of saving. Because if wealth is what you do not see, the foundation of financial security is putting money aside regularly. Saving is invisible, but it builds the silent power that allows freedom, compounding, and protection. Chapter 10. Save money. Saving money is one of the simplest yet most powerful tools in building wealth. Yet, it is often overlooked. Morgan Housel emphasizes that saving is not about income, but behavior. You do not need a high salary to save effectively. You need discipline, consistency, and a mindset that values freedom over status. The act of saving creates options. It allows you to take advantage of opportunities when they arise. It protects you during emergencies. It reduces stress and increases independence. When you have reserves, you are free to make choices without being forced by circumstances. Housel points out that people often underestimate the value of small, consistent savings. Saving a modest portion of your income every month may seem insignificant at first. Yet over time, these contributions grow, especially when combined with compounding. This is not about spectacular returns, but about creating a foundation for long-term security and wealth. Saving also provides psychological benefits. Knowing that you have money set aside gives confidence. It allows you to say no to unnecessary risks and unnecessary spending. It protects against lifestyle inflation, the trap of increasing spending as income rises. Even if you earn more, if you do not save, your freedom and security remain limited. Housel shares examples of ordinary people who accumulated wealth simply by saving consistently. They did not rely on luck, inheritance, or extraordinary talent. They lived below their means, avoided debt, and let time and compounding work in their favor. Over decades, their seemingly small choices multiplied into substantial financial freedom. Another key point is that saving is different from investing. Investing grows money, but saving preserves it. It is the safety net that allows you to take intelligent risks. Without savings, even a brilliant investment strategy can fail if unexpected emergencies arise. Savings act as the invisible buffer between ambition and disaster. Housel also warns against the temptation to spend on status or lifestyle. The desire to appear wealthy often prevents people from saving. They buy items that signal success, but these purchases do not build freedom. In contrast, saving quietly and consistently builds real wealth that is invisible but powerful. Finally, saving prepares you for the lessons in the next chapter. Because while rational strategies matter, real life is unpredictable. Reasonable choices often outperform perfectly rational ones. Being able to save, stay flexible, and prepare for uncertainty is more valuable than trying to be perfect. This sets the stage for the next chapter. Chapter 11. Reasonable is greater than rational. In theory, finance can be perfectly logical. Numbers, formulas, and models promise precise answers. But Morgan Housel emphasizes that real life is rarely perfect. People are emotional, unpredictable, and influenced by circumstances. Being strictly rational often fails when applied to human behavior. Being reasonable, however, works. Rational decisions are based purely on logic. They assume that people act like machines, following optimal strategies every time. But humans do not behave like machines. We have fear, greed, envy, and hope. We make mistakes, overreact, and sometimes act against our own interests. Reasonable behavior acknowledges human nature. It accepts that emotions exist and designs strategies that work despite them. For example, a perfectly rational investor might ignore diversification, believing they can predict which stock will perform best. A reasonable investor, however, diversifies to protect against mistakes, stress, and the unexpected. They do not aim for perfection. They aim for survival, flexibility, and long-term growth. Housel explains that most people succeed financially, not by being brilliant, but by being reasonable. Saving consistently, avoiding debt, and living below your means are reasonable choices. They may not maximize short-term gains, but they reduce risk, stress, and error. Over decades, these choices compound into real wealth. Another key point is managing expectations. Rationality might tell you that stocks will always yield a certain return. Reality shows that markets are volatile. Reasonable behavior prepares for this uncertainty. It allows you to survive downturns, recover from mistakes, and benefit from long-term growth. Housel also highlights the psychological benefit of being reasonable. People who follow reasonable strategies are more likely to stick with them. They are less stressed, less reactive, and more confident. Those who try to be perfectly rational often abandon plans when reality deviates from theory. Reasonable wins where perfect rationality often fails. This principle applies beyond investing. In careers, relationships, and life, aiming for reasonable choices often leads to better outcomes. Flexibility, patience, and self-awareness are more valuable than rigid adherence to logic. People who survive, adapt, and endure are often more successful than those who try to be perfect. Finally, this chapter connects to the next lesson. Surprise. Because life is unpredictable, and even reasonable strategies must anticipate the unexpected. The world will always surprise you, and your success depends on preparing for it. Reasonable behavior provides a buffer, helping you adapt when surprises come. Chapter 12. Surprise. Life is unpredictable. Financial markets, economies, and personal circumstances rarely follow a straight line. Morgan Housel emphasizes that surprise is the norm, not the exception. Expecting the unexpected is a key part of building wealth and navigating life. Even the most rational and reasonable plans can be upended by unforeseen events. A sudden market crash, a natural disaster, or a personal emergency can disrupt carefully laid strategies. History is full of surprises that changed fortunes overnight. Yet most people act as if the future will mirror the past, ignoring the reality of uncertainty. Housel explains that the greatest force in finance is not compounding, luck, or skill alone. It is the ability to survive surprises. Those who endure financial storms are the ones who benefit from rare positive events and recover from setbacks. The world rewards survival more than brilliance. If you cannot withstand shocks, all other advantages are meaningless. One example comes from investing. Stock markets often behave in ways that defy expectations. Bulls become bears, bubbles burst, and unexpected winners emerge. Investors who expect consistency are caught off guard. Investors who prepare for volatility, diversify, and remain patient thrive. Their reasonable approach absorbs the shocks and positions them for the next opportunity. Surprises are not always negative. Positive surprises can change lives. A chance opportunity, an unexpected inheritance, or a sudden innovation can create enormous gains. But to capture these gains, one must survive the negative surprises. This requires prudence, flexibility, and patience. The key is not predicting every event, but being resilient enough to handle the unpredictable. Housel also highlights human bias in underestimating surprise. We assume that trends continue, that probabilities are predictable, and that the future resembles the past. But life and markets are non-linear. Extreme events, rare occurrences, and sudden shifts often dominate outcomes. Understanding this reality changes how we plan, invest, and live. Another lesson is humility. No matter how smart, skilled, or prepared we are, surprises will happen. Overconfidence is dangerous because it blinds us to the possibility of unexpected events. Reasonable people, however, accept uncertainty, plan for the worst, and adapt when reality changes. Finally, this chapter leads naturally to the next lesson: room for error. Because once we accept that surprises will occur, the next step is to build buffers. Having room for error ensures that unexpected events do not destroy wealth, opportunities, or freedom. This is the foundation for long-term survival and success. Chapter 13. Room for error. In life and finance, things rarely go exactly as planned. Morgan Housel emphasizes that building a buffer, room for error, is essential for long-term success. Without this margin, even small mistakes or unexpected events can lead to disaster. Room for error is about preparation and humility. It is not just about saving money. It is about creating flexibility and resilience. It means avoiding overconfidence and leaving space for the unpredictable. Whether in investing, business, or personal decisions, a margin of safety ensures survival. Housel provides examples from history. Some of the wealthiest investors avoided ruin not by making perfect choices, but by leaving room for error. They never bet everything on a single investment. They prepared for worst-case scenarios. This approach allowed them to endure setbacks and benefit from rare opportunities. Without this margin, even intelligent and hard-working individuals can lose everything. The principle also applies to daily life. Having savings, health insurance, and time buffers allows people to navigate challenges without panic. Overcommitting, overleveraging, or ignoring uncertainty removes the safety net. Even a minor surprise, a medical emergency, a sudden job loss, or a market dip can have outsized consequences. Room for error is closely linked to psychology. People underestimate uncertainty and overestimate control. They believe that their plans will succeed perfectly. Housel warns that this mindset is dangerous. The world is unpredictable, and surprises are inevitable. Building a buffer is a way to respect reality rather than assume perfection. Another important aspect is modesty in expectations. Avoiding extreme financial strategies, living below your means, and avoiding debt all create room for error. This is not about being pessimistic. It is about being realistic. It is easier to take advantage of opportunities and survive setbacks when you are not stretched to the limit. Housel also notes that room for error connects directly to patience and compounding. The slow accumulation of wealth depends on surviving through volatility, mistakes, and uncertainty. Without a buffer, you may be forced to abandon long-term strategies during short-term challenges. With a buffer, you can remain calm, stay invested, and allow compounding to work its magic. Finally, this chapter leads to the next lesson. You'll change. Because once we create room for error and survive the unexpected, we must recognize that our goals, desires, and circumstances will also evolve over time. Flexibility and preparation are only valuable if we adapt to our own changing needs and priorities. Chapter 14. You'll change. People rarely stay the same over a lifetime. Morgan Housel emphasizes that your goals, values, and desires will evolve. What feels urgent today may seem trivial in 10 or 20 years. Recognizing this is essential for managing money, making decisions, and planning for the future. Many people make financial choices based on current preferences. They borrow to buy what seems important now. They chase trends, status, or excitement. But over time, priorities shift. A flashy car or luxury item may feel meaningless later. Children, health, or freedom may take precedence. If your financial plan does not account for change, you risk regret. Housel explains that flexibility is more important than perfection. Rigid strategies can fail if your life evolves in unexpected ways. Investing, saving, and spending decisions should leave room to adapt. Your plan should accommodate changes in income, family, health, and goals. A rigid plan that ignores life's natural evolution can cause stress, mistakes, and lost opportunities. Another key insight is that your tolerance for risk changes over time. Young people may chase high-risk investments with long-term horizons. Older individuals may prefer safety, stability, and preservation of wealth. Both approaches are reasonable at different stages of life. Recognizing that you will change allows you to align financial decisions with evolving priorities. Housel also highlights the importance of self-awareness. Knowing that you will change helps avoid impulsive decisions based on fleeting emotions. You can focus on habits that last, like saving, living below your means, and avoiding debt. These habits remain valuable regardless of how your desires evolve. This chapter also connects to expectations. Life rarely unfolds exactly as planned. People, economies, and markets all evolve. By accepting that you will change, you allow yourself to remain flexible, resilient, and prepared for surprises. Finally, this chapter sets up the next lesson. Nothing's free. Because change, uncertainty, and risk come with costs. Understanding that you will change helps you prepare for these costs, appreciate trade-offs, and navigate the hidden expenses in life and finance. Chapter 15. Nothing's free. Nothing in life comes without a cost. Morgan Housel emphasizes that every financial decision, investment, or opportunity has a hidden price. Even when something seems free, it carries consequences, risks, or trade-offs. Understanding this principle is essential for managing money wisely and living a balanced life. In investing, the idea is simple but often overlooked. High returns are always paired with risk. Low-risk options often yield modest returns. There is no magical investment that grows wealth without potential downsides. Ignoring these trade-offs leads to mistakes, losses, and disappointment. Housel provides examples from history. Many people chase high returns without understanding the risks. They borrow to invest, ignore diversification, or bet everything on one opportunity. When unexpected events occur, they lose everything. The cost of ignoring trade-offs can be enormous. The principle also applies to lifestyle choices. Working long hours may bring money, but it costs time, health, and relationships. Spending lavishly may signal status, but it costs security and freedom. Even things that seem small, like daily habits, accumulate costs or benefits over time. Nothing is truly free, and ignoring hidden costs leads to long-term problems. Housel also highlights the importance of awareness. Being conscious of trade-offs allows you to make better decisions. You can choose to accept certain costs for desired benefits. For example, taking a safe job with moderate pay might cost excitement, but provides security and stability. Investing in your education may cost time and effort, but pays lifelong dividends. Another key point is that the price of financial decisions is often emotional rather than monetary. The stress of high-risk investments, fear of loss, or pressure to maintain appearances carries hidden costs. Recognizing these costs helps people make choices that align with their values and goals. This principle also links to previous chapters. Freedom, compounding, room for error, and reasonable behavior all require accepting costs. You cannot have security without saving, growth without patience, or flexibility without preparation. Everything valuable requires sacrifice, effort, or attention. Finally, this chapter leads naturally to the next lesson, you-me. Because understanding cost is not just personal, it affects how we interact with others. The choices we make, the risks we take, and the sacrifices we endure are shaped by relationships, culture, and shared responsibilities. Appreciating these connections is the next step in mastering the psychology of money. Chapter 16, You-Me. Money is not just a personal matter, it is deeply social. Morgan Housel emphasizes that how we earn, spend, and invest is influenced by the people around us. Comparisons, societal expectations, and social pressures shape our financial decisions, often without us realizing it. Humans have a natural tendency to measure success by others' standards. We compare income, possessions, and lifestyle with peers, friends, and neighbors. This can create stress, envy, and poor financial choices. Chasing status, keeping up appearances, or trying to outdo others often leads to overspending, debt, and frustration. Housel points out that the world's richest people often ignore these social pressures. They focus on their own goals, priorities, and values rather than competing with others. This allows them to save, invest, and build wealth without distraction. By controlling comparisons, they gain the freedom to make rational and reasonable financial choices. The chapter also explores how relationships affect money. Financial decisions are rarely made in isolation. Partners, family members, and friends influence choices in spending, investing, and risk-taking. Disagreements or mismatched priorities can create tension. Housel stresses the importance of communication, shared understanding, and compromise to maintain both wealth and harmony. Another key idea is that we often underestimate the invisible costs of social influence. Keeping up with others, trying to impress, or adhering to cultural norms can drain resources and limit opportunities. This ties back to earlier lessons. Freedom, invisible wealth, and saving are all compromised when we prioritize appearances or social approval. Housel also emphasizes the importance of empathy in financial decisions. Recognizing that everyone has different goals, experiences, and constraints helps avoid judgment and conflict. It allows for cooperation, compromise, and smarter collective decision-making. Understanding others' behavior is as important as understanding markets or investments. Finally, this chapter sets up the next lesson: the seduction of pessimism. Because human nature tends to be influenced by fear, skepticism, and negative comparisons. Recognizing the social and psychological forces around us helps us resist the temptation to succumb to pessimism and short-term panic. By managing the influence of you and me, we prepare for a calmer, more resilient approach to wealth. Chapter 17: The Seduction of Pessimism. Humans are naturally wired to notice danger more than opportunity. Morgan Housel emphasizes that pessimism sounds smarter than optimism, but it can mislead us. Negative news, fear, and skepticism grab attention and influence decisions, often at the expense of long-term wealth building. Pessimism feels intelligent because it predicts risk and warns of problems. It is cautious, analytical, and focused on what can go wrong. Optimism, on the other hand, feels naive. It downplays obstacles and risks, which makes it seem less credible. Yet over decades, optimism is more aligned with progress, growth, and compounding returns. Housel explains that markets and economies grow over time, despite cycles of fear and crises. The long-term trend is upward, even though short-term events can appear catastrophic. Those who succumb to pessimism often miss opportunities. They sell during downturns, avoid investing, or hoard cash out of fear, losing the benefits of time and compounding. The chapter also explores the psychology behind this bias. Humans overestimate rare disasters and underestimate gradual gains. We remember crises more vividly than steady growth. This influences investment behavior, career choices, and spending habits. Pessimism seduces because it feels protective, but it can prevent wealth accumulation. Housel emphasizes that both pessimism and optimism are necessary, but balance is key. Being overly optimistic blinds you to risk. Being overly pessimistic blinds you to opportunity. The goal is to remain reasonable, prepared, and flexible while maintaining a forward-looking perspective. Another point is that optimism is contagious and self-reinforcing. Societies, businesses, and markets thrive when people believe in the future. Innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment require confidence in progress. Pessimism slows action and encourages caution beyond what is reasonable, limiting growth. Housel also connects this lesson to personal finance. Those who avoid pessimism can invest consistently, save steadily, and embrace the power of compounding. Those seduced by fear tend to overreact, selling at the wrong time, and losing long-term gains. Understanding this psychological trap allows for better decision-making and resilience. Finally, this chapter prepares the ground for the next lesson. When you'll believe anything. Because after being bombarded with fear and pessimism, people become susceptible to exaggeration, hype, and misinformation. Recognizing the seduction of pessimism helps protect your mind, your wealth, and your choices in an uncertain world. Chapter 18. When you'll believe anything. Humans have a natural tendency to believe stories, especially when they are emotionally compelling. Morgan Housel emphasizes that in finance and life, this can lead to mistakes, gullibility, and poor decisions. People are drawn to narratives that simplify complexity, exaggerate outcomes, or confirm pre-existing beliefs. This tendency is amplified during periods of uncertainty or stress. When markets crash, economies falter, or personal circumstances are challenging, we seek explanations. We latch onto advice, predictions, or surefire strategies, often without questioning their validity. Stories feel real, tangible, and actionable, even when the underlying logic is weak. Housel explains that investors are particularly susceptible to believing anything. Financial media, social proof, and persuasive marketing create compelling narratives. People follow hot tips, hype, or charismatic personalities, thinking they are guaranteed success. The reality is that most predictions fail, and markets are unpredictable. Believing every story can lead to excessive risk, overtrading, or financial ruin. This chapter also explores the role of confirmation bias. Humans favor information that confirms their beliefs and ignore contradictory evidence. This reinforces misconceptions and encourages herd behavior. When everyone believes the same narrative, it can create bubbles, crashes, and irrational behavior. Another key point is that emotional stories override data. Numbers and statistics may show risk, probability, and expected outcomes. Yet a story about someone striking it rich, a company revolutionizing an industry, or a market miracle grabs attention and drives action. The challenge is separating compelling stories from reality and acting in ways that protect long-term wealth. Housel provides examples from history. Speculative manias, dot-com bubbles, and financial crises all demonstrate how belief in a story can distort judgment. Even intelligent, educated people fall victim to hype, showing that critical thinking alone is insufficient without awareness of psychology. The lesson is not to ignore stories entirely, but to approach them with skepticism, patience, and a margin of safety. Ask questions, seek evidence, and consider the unseen risks. Avoid decisions based solely on what sounds exciting, urgent, or sensational. Finally, this chapter prepares the ground for the next lesson. All together now. Because after understanding human biases, fear, optimism, and gullibility, we can integrate these lessons into a cohesive approach to wealth. Recognizing the psychology of money allows us to make decisions that are rational, reasonable, and resilient in a complex world. Chapter 19. All Together Now. By now, Morgan Housel has shown us the many ways psychology shapes our relationship with money. Fear, greed, optimism, pessimism, social influence, compounding, and hidden costs all play a role. In this chapter, he brings it all together, showing how these lessons combine to guide smarter financial behavior. The first key idea is that wealth is a blend of behavior and luck. Compounding works over time, but only if you survive mistakes and unexpected events. Freedom is valuable, but only if you maintain it through saving and room for error. Reasonable choices often outperform perfect rationality because life is unpredictable. All of these principles interact to create a foundation for lasting financial success. Housel emphasizes that building wealth is more about avoiding ruin than achieving brilliance. You cannot control the world, markets, or other people, but you can control your actions, behavior, and mindset. Living below your means, saving consistently, and avoiding overconfidence are all part of a strategy that survives uncertainty. Survival allows you to benefit from rare opportunities when they arise. Another important point is that wealth is invisible. Spending to impress others or chasing status rarely creates true freedom. Real wealth is what you keep, grow, and protect. It is silent, private, and focused on options, flexibility, and security. This principle ties together many earlier lessons, from the man in the car paradox to saving, room for error, and avoiding the seduction of pessimism. Housel also reinforces the importance of self-awareness and humility. You will change. The world will surprise you. You will be tempted to believe anything. Understanding your own biases, emotions, and limitations is critical to making decisions that withstand time and uncertainty. The chapter also highlights patience and long-term thinking. Compounding requires consistency and endurance. Freedom requires restraint. Avoiding ruin requires preparation. These are all behavioral traits, not formulas or clever predictions. Psychology, not math, is the ultimate driver of financial success. Finally, Housel reminds us that money is a tool, not a goal. Its purpose is to give options, security, and freedom. Chasing wealth for status, appearances, or validation often backfires. True financial mastery comes from understanding yourself, your behavior, and the world, and using money to live life on your own terms. This chapter naturally connects to the final chapter, Confessions. Because after laying out all these lessons, Housel shares personal reflections, admitting mistakes, insights, and the lessons he has learned on his own journey. It is a reminder that no one is perfect, but thoughtful behavior and awareness create enduring advantage. Chapter 20, Confessions. Morgan Housel concludes, The Psychology of Money with Personal Reflections and Candid Admissions. In this chapter, he shares his own mistakes, observations, and insights to show that even experienced investors and writers are human, fallible, and constantly learning. Housel begins by admitting that understanding money is as much about behavior as it is about knowledge. He acknowledges moments when he misjudged risk, overestimated his control, or let emotion drive decisions. These confessions reinforce the central idea of the book. Money is psychological, not purely mathematical. He also discusses the role of luck and timing in his own journey. Some successes were due to careful planning and hard work, while others were simply fortunate circumstances. Recognizing the role of luck keeps us humble and prevents overconfidence. It also highlights why survival, patience, and room for error are more important than chasing brilliance. Housel reflects on the lessons he wishes he had embraced earlier in life. He stresses saving over spending, valuing freedom over status, and focusing on long-term growth rather than short-term approval. He admits to being tempted by the allure of flashy wealth, only to realize that true wealth is invisible, private, and empowering. Another key confession is about human nature. He acknowledges how easy it is to succumb to fear, envy, and social pressure. Even knowing these tendencies does not make us immune. We must constantly remind ourselves to stay reasonable, patient, and prepared for surprises. Awareness alone is not enough. Behavioral discipline is essential. Housel also emphasizes the importance of flexibility. Our goals, desires, and circumstances change over time, and financial strategies must adapt. He reflects on personal experiences where rigid thinking led to unnecessary stress or missed opportunities. The confessions underscore that humility, adaptability, and self-awareness are lifelong habits, not one-time insights. Finally, he shares his philosophy on wealth and happiness. Money is a tool for freedom, options, and security. It is not a measure of intelligence, character, or self-worth. By understanding the psychology of money, we can make choices that align with our values and create a life that feels meaningful. Housel concludes by reminding readers that perfection is impossible. Mistakes, surprises, and uncertainty are inevitable. The key is to behave reasonably, prepare for the unexpected, save consistently, and stay flexible. Even small, thoughtful actions compound over time into significant advantages, shaping financial security and peace of mind. This final chapter brings the entire book together. It reminds us that learning about money is a lifelong journey. Psychology shapes every decision, and understanding ourselves is the greatest advantage we can have. By combining awareness, patience, humility, and discipline, we can navigate the unpredictable world of money and life with confidence and resilience. Thank you for listening to The Psychology of Money Summary. Remember, wealth is not just about numbers, but about behavior, patience, and understanding yourself. Apply these lessons, save wisely, prepare for surprises, and focus on freedom over status. If you enjoyed this summary and want more insights on money, investing, and personal growth, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Your journey to smarter money decisions starts here, and we will guide you every step of the way.